Right, morning. I'm with Polly again. You'll remember from last time we were in a different location. We're over at where we're Winsley, over at Hartley Farm. Today we are at Avonfield Garden Centre here in Hilton near Trowbridge. Now, I've got to be honest, I haven't been here for about 4 years. And I came here with someone else actually I'm interviewing in the next week or two, Craig Stone, who's a builder developer. And it's a real transformation. I've got to be honest, this place is absolutely brilliant now. Since I came, they built this log cabin, they've got all the seating outside. It's a beautiful garden centre. I've got to be honest, really taken back by what they've done here. So absolutely lovely. So if you're looking for somewhere to come, this is the place. And in fact, Nick, who works for me, his daughter works here. So I've just been having a chat with her. It's the first time I met her. But anyway, it's a great place. Avonfield Garden Centre down on Marsh Road at Hilton. Really, really worth coming to. But it does get busy, so I'll warn you. We get here at 9 just to make sure we get a table. So anyway, there we go. That's where we are today. So last time when Polly and I met, we were at Hartley Farm. I was interrogating Polly about HR and doing her own business and all of that stuff, which was all really, really interesting. So thanks for that. Polly's just told me she's going to turn the tables on me today, which I'm quite nervous about. I don't mind being the interviewer, but I'm not sure I like being interviewed. So anyway, I think what we're going to talk about today, Polly's going to say she's going to ask me some questions, and that's to do with being an employer. How that plays out, what it was like during the COVID period. Obviously that was a game changer really for probably every business in the world. It wasn't just here in Wiltshire, not just in the UK. And I think every employer worldwide was globally affected by COVID, and still are to some extent. It's ongoing. And I think that what it has done is changed the whole dynamic about the way that businesses now operate. And there's obviously been some casualties during that period, sadly. So, we never want to hear about that. We never like to hear about people losing jobs and businesses going to the wall, but it sadly has happened. So I'm going to leave it to Polly to ask me some questions and interrogate me now, hopefully painlessly and gently.
Well, thanks, Paul, for inviting me back again. It's always lovely to chat. So yeah, as you just mentioned, being an employer is interesting in itself, isn't it? So
It is.
I was just wondering, when you started to employ people into Paxton's, was that the first time that you'd employed people, or had you employed people before?
Right, okay. Not sure there's a short answer to that one. The immediate answer is no, it's not the first time. I was thinking about this in the early hours of the night, actually, when I couldn't sleep when I was working. But I was the head of sales and marketing for what was then the biggest house builder. I've probably told you this, so sorry if I'm going to bore you with this again. But I was the head of sales and marketing for the biggest house builder in the UK. So that related to employing people. So I suppose that was one of the first times. When I left there, I went and worked with the family company for a while, and which was, in its sphere, it was one of the biggest companies in the southeast of England, which employed about 60 people at that time, with a constant turnover of new people and so on, because that was working within the construction industry as well. So there was employing people, but I suppose really, I set up Paxton's about 6.5 years ago now. It was April 2015. And it was very, very different, to be honest with you. I've been out of agency since early 80s when I joined Tarmac, and then came back into it in 2005 14, worked for a local company for a year. We remain nameless, but that was a learning experience in many ways, which relates to being an employer, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So, coming in, it was a whole new aspect. So I was learning on my feet in many respects as well, in terms of not only coming back into a state agency, but also being an employer as well. So, so I think you're always learning. I think being an employer, I think it is always a learning curve, and you never stop learning. And I don't think it matters, how long you're in any industry and how long you're an employer. Every day is a new day, and every day's, there's the goods and the bads of being an employer as well. There's the ups and downs, there's the good days, the bad days. A bit like me at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning this morning, couldn't sleep, so I'm doing video tour uploads and getting a property ready for marketing this morning to make sure it's all live, checking through, getting it off to the owner, ready for what today is a really busy day. So starting the day nicely with Polly, she always cheers me up, so thank you. And then going off and doing my normal stuff.
So you always seem to me to be quite a caring employer. So how would you describe the culture at Paxton's that you've developed?
Oh, okay. I would say that I get quite emotional about this question, because I say my employees, and I hate the term, and I hate being called an employer and a business owner, because my employees are actually my colleagues. I would say they're colleagues more than employees. I never look at it like that. I find that a bit demeaning in a way as a statement, because my colleagues who work with me are also my best friends, and that's fact. We're incredibly close, as a team of people, personally, shoulder to cry on, if there's a laugh to be had, we have a laugh together, we meet up, we go to each other's houses, I babysit, all that sort of stuff, housekeep, as I'm doing for Hayley at the moment while they're on holiday in Essex, so watering the plants and, all that stuff. And I think it all relates to being really personal. I think sensitivity, empathy, caring. Yeah, it's probably a really different dynamic to the way that most employers operate, to be honest here. And I think that, when I don't think it matters whether you're a small team of people or whether you're a large team of people. You spend a lot of time together in the workplace, and you've got to get on. And I'd hate to be, one of these employers who's always beating people with the big stick, like you're not working hard enough, you need to produce more, so on and so on. Because I think that can have a really negative effect on people. And I think that, anyone within the estate agency industry will know that the standard, well, in fact, probably in any sales industry, to be honest with you, but certainly within estate agencies, that employees, sales negotiators, whatever they might be, lettings or whatever, are generally paid a low basic and a commission which is based upon performance. Now that's fine when things are really, really busy and all's going well and the property market's great, but when it actually changes, it can have a really negative impact on employees. And why I say that is because we've all got, me included, Polly, all of us employees, have all got our regular outgoings, mortgage, council tax, food bills, so on and so on, all utility bills and everything else. And if all of a sudden the market dries up and you're trying to live on your basic salary, actually that negativity can have a real impact upon your productivity. Sorry, turn my watch off, from people's productivity, because they're really worrying about how they're going to pay the next month's bills. So really, probably I work in quite a different way to probably the majority, is that I don't pay commission on anything. I just pay my staff a straight basic salary, which I would say is a fair and reasonable salary that one would expect to get with basic and commission. And I think that plays out, and it's all about trust. You know, in everything that you do in life, it's all about trust. And I think if you've got people, you employ people that you trust, they will still produce the same amount of work whether you're paying them commission or not paying them commission. And you know, it's the carrot and stick, isn't it, at the end of the day? You know, you promise this and beat them if they don't produce it, you know. But I think that, you know, us as a team of people, say we're incredibly close, probably uniquely actually. You know, we share, you know, our own personal lives as well as I do as an employer, which, you know, some people might find a little bit unusual. But I think when you're close, you know, when you trust one another, it just builds a really strong bond, and that's what we've got. And I think it plays out. We, you know, as a company, we get drop-ins into our office all the time, constantly. Children, mums and dads, you know, ex-clients, you know, it's a really nice environment. I love it. I've got to be honest. So hopefully that sort of answers your question. Probably a bit long-winded, but there we go. I'm long-winded everything. So
you do seem like a really close team, I must admit. But it must come down to recruiting the right people in the first place, surely. So how, I guess there might be people watching going, that all sounds great, but how do you get to that point? So I guess, you know, is there anything in particular you do in your recruitment method? Do you have particular values that you talk about and you look for those sort of values in other people, or I'm putting you on the spot now, Paul?
You are and not, because actually I find it really quite amusing, because I'm sure that Natalie would roar with laughter over this question, because when I was looking for Natalie, I won't go into the background of how this came about, but I was advertising for a lettings manager, but I advertised without saying who we were or anything about it. And Natalie, my now lettings manager, saw this advert and was slightly intrigued that the company wasn't named, there was very little info, so she wrote, and we arranged to meet in a pub in Warminster, close to Longley, but she didn't know who she was meeting. It was all very cloak and dagger, you know, probably a bit MI6 to be honest here. So I remember that she'd said to her dad, I'm going to get the car registration number of the guy. If I'm not back out in an hour, ring the police. I know this is a terrible confession, but anyway, I took my wife along as well for the interview, and I think that, you know, I mean, this probably sounds incredibly unprofessional, but Natalie turned up. I think we spent most of the time talking about personal conversations about children, cats and stuff like that. So that was the Natalie interview, and then we arranged the second one after that. I think
and
probably to talk
Natalie
about
with you?
4 years. I interviewed David at Hartley Farm. I think we spent 2 hours talking about history, war and other stuff, and then Natalie rang and said, don't remind Paul, he's got an appointment. Has the interview finished? And David said, no, we haven't started the interview yet. We had to rebook that. So for me, it's all about relationships and personalities. I'll be truthful, it's not I mean, CVs, people's experience obviously plays a good part, but I think it's more so working with people. It's about relationships. And someone can have the best CV in the world, you know, but if it's someone that you can't work with, it makes no odds whatsoever. And I say this to owners, you know, I go out to value property and I say to them that, you know, I can say to you, I'm the best estate agent in the world. I can offer you the best package in the world. I could offer you the cheapest fee in the world. But actually, if you don't like me, then you're not going to employ me. End of. And I think that in terms of employing staff, actually works on the same basis. They can come with every credential but you've got to like them, and you've got to have this relationship, this bond that you have almost immediately, I think, with people. And that's how I tend to employ. You don't always get it right, but I'd say, we've got, I have to say, an amazing team of people, really truthfully. They really are, I value them all really, really highly. And we are all close friends.
Brilliant, thank you. And just lastly, Paul's got to go in a minute, but I just wanted to touch on this last sort of 18 months has obviously been very, very challenging for your industry, the market, and your people. Just wondered, as an employer, whether you've done anything in particular to keep people connected while working remotely, or keep people engaged and looked after during this very challenging time.
Yeah, well, okay. I actually contracted COVID on the 6th of March, and I think I was probably one of the first in Trowbridge. I ended up with pneumonia twice, inflammation of the lungs and airways, didn't get hospitalised, but only by choice, but was almost forced at the end that I was going to be hospitalised. So I was out really for 9 months, and ended up with long COVID as well. So during that time it was particularly difficult. Sadly, Natalie had also had pneumonia or pleurisy at the start of the year as well, which carried on into probably just about the same time that I had pneumonia. So yeah, it was a really, really challenging time. We still had to work. I had to work as an employer. One of my colleagues, David, was almost left running the show. The office was shut. I suppose that was the plus in some respects. We couldn't do viewings, valuations, or anything else. Everything we were doing remotely, to be honest with you. But we kept the office shut until when we were allowed to reopen it, and then we worked on a rota basis, and we're still operating that in a way, to be honest with you, where we are doing, well, Natalie himself particularly, Natalie, my lettings manager, are working, doing remote working as well as working in the office. And I think really a lot of that relates to the way that we as businesses have changed in our thinking, with people now working from home, which has almost become a sort of standard company policy with many companies. And I think in terms of productivity, I talk a lot. I've got to be honest, I'm probably the worst distraction in the office. It's a wonder anyone gets anything done when I'm in there. They probably don't. So I think they're all quite pleased when I work at home because I get stuff done. But we are doing that. We still meet all the time, either socially, in the office, Zoom calls, phone calls, and so on. And I think that, if people are working remotely, I think the social face-to-face physical meetings is really, really important. I meet a lot of people who work for, a lot of clients work for the MOD, military, stuff like that, police, so on and so on. And a lot of them have been working from home since March last year, and they've not been in the office and they miss working in the office and being with people. I think we're built to work as human beings, in a physical relationship, and I think a lot of them are missing that, to be honest with you. So we do a combination of both, in the office, out of the office. During the COVID period, the office was shut. When we did open, we were doing sort of a rota scheme, I suppose, that there weren't too many people in the office. Sometimes there were just one, and we would just rotate that almost on a daily basis or whatever. So that was really how we worked through. Wasn't perfect, but we made it through, and we're still here, as you can tell.
Great, excellent. Have you got any questions for me?
No, not at the moment. I'll get you next time. Payback.
Fair enough.
Payback, yeah.
Fair enough.
So no, it's great.
Thank you for that.
Well, I'm going off to an appointment now, so a take on. So I look forward to that, and just say thanks to Polly again, and good to meet you. Great place.
Great place. Thanks.
So I don't know what else you're up to. What are you up to today?
Oh, I've got some work to do for some other clients, so I'll
Yeah.
be getting on with that and
Okay.
seeing what the kids are doing at home.
Good. Hopefully behaving themselves.
Looking after the puppy, I think. Hi ho.
What's your puppy, remind me?
He's a Cocker Spaniel. He's almost 6 months old, called
Great.
Merlin.
He's called Merlin.
Merlin.
Yeah, brilliant name. Brilliant name. Oh, well, I hope he hasn't chewed and eaten all the sofas
I
and
hope
eaten the
not.
children as
Yeah,
well.
I
So
hope not.
hopefully it'll all be one in piece when you get back home.
Yes.
But as ever, great seeing you again,
Thank
and
you, Paul.
thanks
Great
for
to see
today
you.
as well. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you. Bye.
Just take this off.